Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to you all from around the world. So pleased you can be with us today for this important webinar. Let's get started. We have 45 minutes arranged for this session, and the focus, as you see in the screen in front of you, will be on let's talk about standards for an SCBA. When we talk about standards, it includes European, EN, NIOSH, and NFPA. Right. Myself, Radhakrishnan. I'm based in Dubai, working for MSA since 2015, and you can reach out to me on the email, phone number, and also on WhatsApp. Right. The agenda, which is divided into different sections. First, we will have a quick look at EN, NIOSH, NFPA standards, and then we go through specific topics like, is there a higher standard that is used for interior or structural firefighting? Then what is the difference between NFPA and EN SCBA? And what must be done, of course, to switch over from NFPA sets to EN SCBA sets, because many of our customers are having NFPA sets, and if they prefer to switch over from NFPA to EN, then what must be done? And then at the end of the session, we will look at the frequently asked questions, open forum. In the meantime, like I mentioned, you can post your questions on the chat box or Q&A and send it to host and presenter to ensure we see it and respond to you at the end of our presentation session. Right, first, let's have a very high level standards overview here. When we talk about SCBA standards, obviously, one on the European side, the other one on the American side. And so when we talk about European side, we see EN 137/2006, that is quite common. And then under that, for industrial use, type 1 is preferred, and for firefighting use, type 2. Similarly, when we look at on the other side, in USA, NIOSH 42 CFR Part 84 for industrial use, Code for Federal Regulations, and then plus 1981, 2018 edition for firefighting use, plus it includes CBR and testing. One would wonder, what is this SCBA all about? SCBA, most of you are aware of that, self-contained breathing apparatus set. Sometimes at the field, people simply say BA set, or someone says SCBA, self-contained air breathing apparatus, or a CABA, compressed air breathing apparatus. Simply, the BA is the terminology used by the people. Self-contained breathing apparatus sets that are manufactured for firefighting applications, safety, search and rescue applications, are certified to safety and health standards worldwide. Regulatory requirements and voluntary standards that are used by many nations, yes, base approval fall into two major groups. Like I talked about, one is on the North American and then the other one on the European. So let's look at the European side. EN 137/2006 SCBA set. Okay. If you happen to look at the specifications for an SCBA in compliance with PPE Directive 89/686 EEC standard, then I would like to say that this is no longer valid, and it has been changed to the new directive. We will also have a look at that in the following slides here. Okay, like I mentioned, the type 1 for industrial use, type 2 for professional firefighting applications. What is interesting in EN SCBA set, though we simply say that EN 137/2006 compliant for an SCBA, but the individual components like a face mask, a cylinder valve, all these components have got their own standard and it's compliant, right? That is what the interesting point in EN standards. Okay, for the face mask, EN 136/998 is followed. Under that, we have a class 1, class 2, class 3, and class 3 plus. So 1 and 2, general use, short-term use, and 3 for special applications. Firefighting is considered to be a special application, so your mask shall have the certification class 3. When it comes to class 3 plus, that means the product goes through flame engulfment test. So most of the masks will have that class 3 plus. That means the mask has gone through the flame engulfment test. Okay, for the breathing air cylinder, we have another standard EN 12245 2002. And then under that, we have type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4. That's the latest one. Type 1 and type 2, it's quite common. People understand talking about the steel cylinder or aluminum cylinders. And the most popular at the moment is type 3. That many customers simply call it as a lightweight cylinder or carbon composite cylinder. That means you got an inner liner, aluminum inner liner. We will see that in the following slides. And then type 4, this is getting popularity. When we say type 4, this is a PET cylinder. That means in the type 3 cylinder, the inner aluminum liner is replaced by this PET or a plastic or simply the PET material, polyethylene terephthalate. So that provides a lightweight, then hygiene. There are certain features. We will also look into those aspects. And then for the cylinder valve, EN1441 cylinder valve, part 1 threaded connection, part 2 outlet connection here. So mostly our point is on the part 1. The cylinder valve has additional features or the additional components, depends on the customer's requirement. These options are incorporated into the cylinder valve. The first one, like a EFV. EFV means excess flow valve, and then a pressure gauge, integrated pressure gauge, and then overpressure or the burst disc, and then a ratchet or spring-loaded or anti-closer. Simply people call it as a locking valve. So it helps to normally open, and then if you want to close it, then you need to pull and twist or a turn. This is quite handy, especially for the customers when they use the cylinders for confined space, or if they are going through a narrow space. It prevents incidental closure of the valve. Okay. And the integrated pressure gauge obviously helps you to understand the high pressure inside your cylinder. Burst disc, obviously the overpressure, it helps. And the breathing air quality, we have EN12021. 2014 is the latest one. Obviously, under this breathing air quality, you can test water, oil, water vapor, oil mist, CO, CO2, odor, test plus oxygen. These substances will have to be tested periodically, once in 3 months, once in 6 months. The standard calls for specific period, and many customers use it. They implement it according to their usage at the field. Okay, the new PPE directive is here, regulation EU 2016 forward sec 425 of 9 March 2016 that covers the design, manufacture, and marketing of PPE equipment, that is personal protective equipment. Right. Okay, when we say this EN, the European Committee for Standardization, or simply CEN, an international non-profit trade-related association, provides a platform for development of EN standards and other technical specifications. Common European standards reach a large population with reduced development and testing costs. CEN offers a voluntary European standard, that is ENs, that is what known as EN 137 2006. So when we talk about 2006, this is still being followed, but the new edition 2007-01. This is not implemented, but it is being widely followed by many customers. Under that 2007, the classification like type 1 for industrial use and type 2 for professional firefighting is already being followed. There are additional aspects like underwater testing method, and then the electronic components, the specific classifications. So these points are also looked into that in the edition 2007, and there are other points talking about whether the face mask and lung demand valve can be interchanged. The interoperability or the possibility of using these components also looked into that. Right. Moving on to the other side, that is NFPA 1981, 2018 edition. What happens in NFPA is once in 5 years, they always review the standard and upgrade it based on customers' feedback, manufacturers' feedback. They always look into that. Most of the sets supplied in the market 2013 edition. When we talk about MSA perspective, our G1 SCBA, that is 2018 edition approved. But when we supplied in 2014, 15 until 2019, most of the features have been already included. That means the unit was almost compliant with the 2018 edition, except only one point. That's the one we always talk to our customers. That is the universal emergency body breathing or breathing supply systems. So UEBSS, people simply say that. All right. Then when we look at the 1982, this is a separate standard that talks about the man-down situations, then electronic devices, mainly for the electronic devices, right? And then again, the point is that NFPA 1982 is standalone in that it is not required for SCBA to be NFPA 1981 compliant, right? And for the industrial applications, obviously NIOSH 42 CFR Part 84, that's the one for the industrial applications. When it comes to additive standard for the firefighting is high level performance. Right. Now the question comes, is there a higher standard that is used for interior firefighting? We have seen what is EN standard, what is then NFPA when it comes to the firefighting EN 137 Type 2, and then NFPA 1981 edition 2018. So is there a higher standard that is used for interior firefighting? To answer this question, it would make sense to compare the standards, that is comparison of standards between EN and NFPA. So the following slides provide overall high-level overview of how the tests being followed for both standards. When we talk about flame engulfment test, the preconditioning almost, in terms of the temperature wise, 95 degrees centigrade for 15 minutes in the US, and in the Europe, 90 for 15 minutes. And then you can see the after flame drop, 15 centimeter drop, and similarly for Europe, but the maximum, the temperature is 2.2 seconds after flame, and here 5 seconds. So this is what we have compiled here. Heat and flame allowable after flame duration, after flame duration 2.2 for NFPA, and then in the Europe is about 5 seconds. Similarly, if you look at the CBRN performance, we have seen on the NFPA CBRN performance was required and mandatory, but when it comes to a European EN standard, it is optional. But for MSA side, M1 SCBA, the new model, what we offer from our European platform has been approved, certified and approved to CBRN performance. So that means when you configure your M1 SCBA, you will be able to select CBRN certification. So when you select that option, when the product is delivered with a label complying to the CBRN performance. The other interesting point is that about a heads-up display inside your mask or a face piece. This is required in US side. When it comes to Europe, this is optional. A few customers are offering it as add-on version. A few customers also providing like a visual images inside the unit. And in terms of mode of operation for the firefighting applications, always a pressure demand type, that is positive pressure. And when it comes to Europe, you have negative pressure or either positive pressure. When you say positive pressure, the pressure inside your mask is always on higher side than your ambient or atmospheric pressure. Okay, when in terms of talking about the usage in explosive atmosphere or attacks atmospheres, you can see the electronic components. like here, the 1982, the tests or the specific requirements. And when it comes to Europe, also you have specific other requirements. Similarly, the temperature range testing and then the radiant heat testing, particularly for your lens and the face piece, and also in the European side for your mask, the LGTB or lung governed demand valve, and the hoses, you've got a different radiant heat test parameters. This is on the firefighting side. When we look at for the industrial SCBA side, we have seen EN 137 type 1 for the industrial applications, and then NIOSH 42 CFR Part 84 for industrial search and rescue applications. Obviously, if you compare what happens on the pressure, always identified as in bar, you on your cylinder, or in generally customers say 200 bar cylinder, 300 bar cylinder, like that. But when it comes to NIOSH on the American side, it is always identified as a low pressure cylinder, that is 2216 PSI, that's a pounds per square inch PSI. Similarly, on the high pressure cylinders, on the European side, you say 300 bar high pressure cylinder, but for the American side, we call it as 4500 PSI. And the temperature, just for easy understanding here, and then the cylinder connection. Interestingly, on the EN 1441, we have talked about that the threaded connection, where the female thread on cylinder. But on the American side, you will see the male thread on the cylinder. So that is totally different. In terms of weight, maximum 18 kg. And for the American side, for the ease of understanding, I put it as 16 to 18 kg. But otherwise, it's normally called in pounds. Sometimes you say 24 to 30 pounds, 28 to 38, 36 pounds, different, in pounds it's told. And the other point when it comes to the cylinder, like a low pressure or high pressure or a 6-liter cylinder, 6.8 liter cylinder, 9-liter cylinder, like that, the cylinder, the capacity is usually indicated in, 6.8 liter, 6 liter, 9 liter, even the latest one, 12 cylinder in the market. But on the American side, it is always called in cubic feet. We will see a good point on the coming slides. Interestingly, NIOSH does not certify individual SCBA components. When we looked at our European SCBA sets, we had seen that individual SCBA components were certified under EN, but in NIOSH, no, it does not certify individual SCBA components. And then again, NIOSH does not require SCBA to be certified as intrinsically safe for the industrial search and rescue applications. In North America, the UL 1913 approval is required for NFPA. EN must meet specific ATEX for intrinsic safe certifications. If you look at overall, if you compare the standards overall, not identical, but it looks similar, right? Okay. Then you say, okay, what's the difference between NFPA and EN SCBA? Having seen the standards, having looked at what are they, when we look at the difference here, in terms of SCBA basic requirements, let it be for the breathing resistance or airflow requirements or CO2 content of the exhaled air, or the alarm, the low pressure alarm or the low pressure warning whistle or low pressure alarm. Generally, people say, okay, if in the European side, if you're using a 45-minute set, you can use that set for 35 minutes working duration, then 10 minutes for your safe duration, that is for escape, getting back to your safe area or assembly area. So like that, 35 minutes and 10 minutes. So if you see a cylinder 45 minutes duration, that means you can use it for 35 minutes, effectively use it, and then last 10 minutes, you have to get back to your assembly area or a safe area. So that last 10 minutes, you will get that warning whistle. Typically, when you say in a pressure gauge, the pressure drops down to 55 plus or minus 5 bar. That means 50 to 60 bar. When the pressure drops down, you will get an alarm. That means the warning whistle starts whistling sound. So then it is understood that you need to get back. So like that. Similarly, when it comes to the American side, once the pressure in your cylinder drops down to 33% of filled pressure, then the warning bell or the sound happens. So that is an indication that it is time for you to get back to your safe area. 30%, 33% of the field pressure here. When you look at that, so these are not identical, but similar, right? This is what we see the overall similarity here, right? Okay, then what about when we look at when we start comparing the EN SCBA and then American SCBA? We have seen the similarity, not identical, but similarities there. First, let us look at the component level. The first one is about the face mask or a face piece. The terminology usually followed in the European industry is face mask, full face mask, but on the American side they call it as like a face piece. When I start comparing the masks availability for both European and American, we have one mask called the G1 platform mask. On the European side mask and then American side face piece. So what we provide the G1 face mask for European side, G1 face piece for American side. So these two masks cannot be interchanged to use it because the front housing or the front port housing, which includes your demand valve holder here, which is totally different. When it comes to the American side G1 face piece, it has the heads-up display. So obviously the optical lighting and everything, it looks a little bulky. It cannot be fit on to your European mask. For the ease of identification at the field, if someone is having a mix of both European set and American set, got a small red like a button. A red marked one. From there, we can easily understand that, okay, this is European mask, whereas in the American mask, you do not see that kind of a red marking over there. And then optical lighting, obviously there, which is not available on your European mask. And then the in terms of a slide grid on the side, if you see here, because of the front port housing, it is a bit bulky for your face piece. Then you can see the grid size is also on the numbers are high, and then the size is different. So you cannot use it. Though a few components like the inner mask can be interchanged, or the head strap or the harness can be interchanged, but not the front port housing and the grid here. The product will be supplied with optional accessories like the optical kit or a spectacle kit. Someone wants to use this SCBA or the mask with their reading glass on, then obviously we supply that spectacle kit, which can be fixed over there. It fits nicely for the users. Right. When we look at the cylinders, okay, cylinders, we touch very high level, like the bar on the European side. On the NIOSH side, NIOSH and NFPA side, it is always noted in PSI. On the cylinder water capacity, it starts from 0.8 to 12 liter, and the 50 liter, which is used for the airline trolley units. And then the pressure always indicated 200 bar or 300 bar. But when it comes to capacity here, it is known as a cubic feet. 1 cubic feet is approximately 28.32 liters. On the cylinder, you can see the marking here. If it is a 30-minute cylinder, then you will see 45 cubic feet. If it is 45-minute cylinder, then you see 66 cubic feet. 60-minute cylinder, obviously you see 88 cubic feet. The low pressure, 2216 psi, and then high pressure, 4500. Also, the other one, 5500 psi is also offered. We have seen on the European side, like type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, and then that steel cylinder, type 3, your carbon composite, and then type 4, PET cylinder. When it comes to American side, we have two. One is aluminum cylinder that is usually used for the low pressure, that's an aluminum cylinder, and then the carbon composite we also provide for the low pressure, but in the carbon composite. And then ultralight carbon composite cylinder is also provided for the high pressure, like 5500 psi. That is the comparison. So we have compared the mask in terms of components. We have also looked into the cylinder, looking at the standards and the differences here. One important point we want to take a fine dive here, deep dive, and see the type 3, that is carbon composite cylinder. In terms of construction, you can see the aluminum liner, and then on top of it, the high strength fiber overwrap, and then you have the filament, the interwoven, and then resin or a paint coated is offered in the carbon composite cylinder, the lightweight cylinder, type 3 cylinder. When it comes to type 4, what happens? This aluminum inner liner is replaced with the PET. That is what you can see here, this PET. So that goes inside instead of aluminum. So what happens because of that? Because of that, you get nearly about 30% weight reduction when you compare with your type 3 cylinders. And the cylinder is provided with NLL. That means non-limited lifetime. So once in 5 years, you carry out your hydro test, and then everything is fine, you can continue to use that type 4 cylinder. This is non-limited lifetime. Because it has no, the steel or aluminum or any metal materials, so no corrosion, it's corrosion free, hygiene, pure, and then the maintenance is quite easy. Someone is using a cylinder valve here, and then they didn't pay attention. They increased the torque, they used it higher torque than the permitted level. Then what happened? The cylinder neck portion is getting cracked. All right. So the moment the crack happens on the type 3 cylinder, that means the cylinder has to be condemned. When it comes to type 4, here we provide a small ring here. You can see this part. And once you tight it, or someone has done that, then the crack happens to this. By means of that, the cylinder neck portion is still, the thread is still protected. We need to simply take this out and place a new one and continue to use the cylinder. So in terms of maintenance, this is quite easy. Again, this cylinder goes through the burst test, type test, all these tests it goes through. And then again, after that, it is certified. Performance test, we have the test certificates available for the type 4 cylinders. MSA is offering type 4, type 3 cylinders for use with SCBA. We have tested specific cylinders, specific branded capacity cylinders. Everything is available in our product certification. We would be more than happy to share that for you. Okay. When it comes to cylinder marking, we talked about, always you see in bar, liter, and then the, NLL. So what do we see here on the cylinder marking? You can see here NLL, that is non-limited lifetime. That means a type 4 cylinder. Typically, the markings comes with the for the PET liner, the type 4 cylinder, you can see. And then the bar, 300 bar, and the test pressure is obviously 1.5 times of the filling pressure. That means the filling pressure here is 300 bar, 1.5 times 450 bar. That is your test pressure for the cylinders. And then the type 3 cylinder also, it's marked. And then when it is supplied, you will have the hydro testing certification marking. And then once in 5 years, the next certification marking is identified here as a 2024. Now, 2019 it was manufactured, and 2024 you need to carry out your next hydro testing. And in the EN side, we do offer European cylinders with the limited lifetime. That means 15-year cylinder, 30-year cylinders we offer, and also NLL, non-limited lifetime. Particularly on type 4, all cylinders are NLL. Right. We have seen components like a mask, cylinder marking, and then cylinder valve. There are different types of cylinder valves available. Popular inline, straight, and then cross flow valve, right angled or 90 degree. But the most popular nowadays, followed by the customers, is inline. That is what MSA is offering. MSA also offer cross flow and right angled valve. But the most popular, like I mentioned, is inline valve. Let us understand what are the types of valves. Again, the components, we have seen these terminologies like a EFV, excess flow valve, burst disc, and an integrated pressure gauge ratchet. These are optional features offered along with the cylinder, subject to customers' requirement, application, and their, obviously the interest, budget, everything. What is inline valve? Inline valve means the hand wheel here, the hand wheel in line with cylinder connection. That means when you fix your cylinder, when you take the cylinder valve and fix it on your cylinder, the hand wheel is in line with your cylinder thread, right? This is your inline valve. This is the most popular in the industry. It's followed by many of our customers. When you look at the cross flow valve, that means the hand wheel, you can see here, the hand wheel in line with outlet connection. That means, if you want to refill the cylinder here, you use that to refill the cylinder. So this is here, the hand wheel in line with outlet connection. That is your cross flow valve. When it comes to right angled valve, here what happens, right angle, the valve here, the hand wheel, right? The hand wheel is right angled to your cylinder threaded connection, right? You see here? So the hand wheel cylinder connection and outlet connection all in right angled position to each other, right? So here, here, here. So this is what we call it as a right angled valve. A few images for ease of understanding. You can see the right angled valve, inline valve. Okay. And then the features, the optional features, what we offer for the cylinder valve. You can see here the integrated pressure gauge. You see this, the integrated pressure gauge. From this, we can easily understand what is the pressure inside your breathing air cylinder. You don't have to take this cylinder, fit it onto your SCBA and open the cylinder valve, look at the pressure gauge. What is the pressure inside your cylinder? That is typically followed in the past. But now, since you have this option, you can easily see the pressure inside your cylinder without opening the valve. All right, that's the pressure gauge, integrated pressure gauge. Then what we have is the burst disc. Someone has lost their attention while refilling. The pressure got increased more than the specified pressure. So in order to prevent the cylinder bursting, so that the burst disc is provided here, right? And then we have few other point. The other one is we talked about like an excess flow valve, right? The excess flow valve is here. We will also see what are the options available. And the other one we talked about the ratchet. The ratchet is normally here inside the valve. So in the valve itself, you have a spring-loaded or anti-closer. That means, like I mentioned, you can normally open, but in order to close, you need to pull and turn. Okay, pull and twist. So with this, it is quite handy for you to use the cylinder or SCBA in confined space or narrow space. It's quite handy. Right. When it comes to excess flow valve, there are different terminologies, but we follow two. One is, the terms here, air discharge protection, the excess flow valve, airflow protection, all of them. But MSA offers two different systems here. What are they? Suppose erroneously, the cylinder, dropped, okay, and the valve is broken. So when it happens, a small amount of air escapes through this cylinder valve, and then the cylinder, the pressure is dropped down. Because of this, it protects cylinder against spiraling, or it becomes a projectile. Then it will reduce the risk of injuries because of having this kind of air discharge protection. And how it functions. When the valve is closed, you can see here the valve is closed, the pressure here, and this is where your air discharge protection. So once the valve is open, the normally there allows, okay. Then when the valve is broken, what happens? The air discharge protection is closed, allowing small amount of air goes out of the cylinder, right? This is on the air discharge protection. How can we identify whether it has air discharge protection? Simple, you will see a marking here, 03D45, like a stroke number segment, when it was the batch number. So based on that, you can identify. But normally from MSA, you can see here 03D45 by manufacturer on the valve segment, stroke number, like that. And excess flow valve, when valve not activated, no airflow limitation. Sometimes customers also say airflow limiting option or airflow limiting valve. When valve activated, airflow limitation. And safety function, what's that? When the valve is broken, okay, EF activated. When the valve is open unintendedly, okay, then again EFV, that is excess flow valve activated. A large quantity of air is completely flown out, and then the bottle getting empty, the breathing air cylinder gets empty, and with no risk to health or property. Like we talked about, what happens if there is no excess flow valve? Then the cylinder starts spiraling. The cylinder become a projectile that will result in injuries to the users. Okay. And then obviously it cannot be used for spring or jump rescue cushions. So what happens when this is followed? Then immediately EFV would be activated. That is airflow limiting valve. How to identify that? Without any regulation or norms, normally when you see the valve handbill in a blue color, that indicates the installation of your EFV, right? So when you have black color handle, then you can understand it may or may not have. It depends on the manufacturers, but in the industry, it is popular that you have a blue color handwheel. That means that identifies that, okay, this valve has the EFV. Now, we have seen the features. We have looked at the specific standards and then the components and then the features. Obviously, customer would ask that, okay, how to select cylinder plus valve? You need to look at your application, whether you're going to use your SCBA for a simple compliance purpose. That means you never know when you're going to use your SCBA. That's only there for compliance purpose, or like a wall hanger. Someone says, no, we have a mandatory use once in a week. We need to do this. Someone we quite often use for, say, a search and rescue applications. We use our set for firefighting applications. 24/7, the unit should be on ready to use condition. Look at that applications. And then cylinder capacity plus pressure rating. You want to use your SCBA for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or 60 minutes. And then low pressure or high pressure. Cylinder valve, do you need to have the options like a EFE, integrated pressure gauge, or ratchet type? And then what we always recommend, look at your local regulations and statutory requirements. Most of the energy producer companies have got their own PPE policy, protective equipment use policy, safety legislations they do have. So look at that regulations, legislations. Based on that, you need to finalize your SCBA. Also, you've got different set of cylinders, and then you want to use that cylinders with, say, M1 SCBA, that is a European SCBA, which is offered by MSA. And then we support to test that particular cylinder with our M1 SCBA so that we provide the product compatibility test, third-party test certificate. You can continue to use our M1 SCBA without discarding or condemning your existing cylinders at your fleet. Obviously, budget, that is important point. Right, moving on to the American side. If you look at the cylinders, so what sort of marking you will see? You see here the 45 minutes cylinder for the high pressure, that is 4,500 psi. You normally see here the marking in green color on the cylinder, and then always identified in cubic feet, 66 cubic feet, right? And again, in terms of when it was manufactured, first month in 2019, Then again, the next hydrostatic testing, everything is identified on the cylinders. When it comes to cylinder valve, a few points are mandatory, like the burst disc. You can see here the burst disc is mandatory on your cylinder valve, and also the integrated pressure gauge. So the integrated pressure gauge and burst disc is obviously offered. So what is the another point? What is the another important point here is your the ratchet, or here in the NFPA NIOSH side, people call it as a locking valve or non-locking valve. That is, your locking means that is nothing but your ratchet type. Okay, and then obviously the inline pressure relief is also offered in the sets. Look at the connection types, what we offer. In the European side, we provide a quick connect. In the terminology in the European SCBA set we follow is alpha click. But on the NIOSH or NFPA side, we have a quick connect, the quick connect options. We do provide a threaded connection and then quick connect options. A quick connect, it helps to change the cylinder quite easily at the fleet. And the hand wheel type, it's a normal standard hand wheel. You can see a circular one, and then the locking, you see like a square, like that. This is what indicates the difference between standard wheel and the locking hand wheel options. That is a ratchet wheel. Okay, we have seen on the components level. Then what sort of options available to compare both European SCBA and American SCBA? When it comes to MSA G1, NFPA, and European M1 SCBA, we provide the configurable options. That means you can use our assemble to order online configurators. You can select the components subject to your application. For example, the harness. So someone is saying, I'm going to use your SCBA for search and rescue applications, but it will be very close to boiler area. So the environment is always warm or hot. So you can go for harness material like a Kevlar. And someone says, I'm going to use this for only industrial applications. I'm not going to use it for firefighting applications. So obviously you can go for standard fabrics. So based on your application, you can select different harness. So we provide flexibility in options. So flexibility of options to select as per your requirement. We also provide the pressure gauges, simple analog pressure gauge, both analog and digital integrated pressure gauge, analog and digital pressure gauge with, what we call it as like a motion scout or the motion alert function. That means if the firefighter or the user doesn't move for 18 seconds, then it alerts against immobility of the user. So that is also available. And then the mask or a face piece. So we have the heads-up display in the American face piece. And the lung demand valve also offered with the standard or the bypass. We do have that options. Pressure reducer, quick fill, buddy breather, and then external airline. All these options, like we talked about, remote or a direct connect on the back plate. So no remote connect option is available on the European SCBA. European SCBA is always direct connect on top of the back plate, just direct mounting. Then cylinder plus valve, user selectable options. We are almost coming to the end of our session. One would ask this question: what must be done to switch from NFPA sets to EN sets? Right. Yes, to switch over from NFPA to EN SCBA, obviously the compressor and the air quality test kit, smart check or the test station, you have different SCBA sets, so we need to have a different test station. MSA is offering two different test station for European SCBA and American SCBA. Few brands are available in the market for both standards to test. Then service tools, and then obviously we provide CAP training, and then documentation includes dunning, doffing, and maintenance. When it comes to hydro test, it remains the same. Once in 5 years, you need to do the hydro testing of the cylinders. I would like to end the session with reminding on M1 SCBA. That is going to be the future platform. It provides greater modularity enhanced hygiene. You can easily clean the backplate and the components. Improved ergonomics, highest safety standard. It is designed and manufactured. Reduced cost of ownership. This provides great options. Some customers are using our old SCBA and they want to use the same back, the back plate, but they would like to go for the face mask and the lung demand valve. Yes, they can buy M1 lung demand valve and G1 mask to use with your existing, say, the old SCBA like Ergo, Air Max units. On the other way around, they say that, okay, I would like to use our existing Automax lung demand valve and ultralight or 3S mask with M1 SCBA. So we have that product compatibility test certificates available, so you can mix and match at the fleet. So this helps the customers not to invest money on each and every component. So reduced cost of ownership. State of the communication. So we provide the telemetry, the connectivity options. We will talk about more in the coming months. And then, like I mentioned in the beginning, CBR and approved M1 SCBA. Also, we provide Alpha Click for easy change out of cylinder at the field. Above all, 10-year warranty is offered. We have fantastic documents prepared. All of them have been uploaded on our website. It's available. So feel free to access and download and look at that documents when it comes to warranty, user instructions, bit specification, data, everything available on our website. Right. This is what I have prepared. I hope I have covered almost all the points, whatever I have prepared. So when it comes to the conclusion, always, what is the conclusion here? If we look at the test parameter, SCBA sets manufactured for North American or European markets may undergo similar tests, although some test parameters may vary significantly. A brief comparison was the one we have seen in the previous slides. Looking at test parameter, intrinsic safety, pressure indication, construction, cylinders, face piece tests, all these aspects, one would say North American and European SCBA approvals differ due to several key distinctions as well as a large number of lesser considerations. As firefighting SCBA cannot be labeled as both NIOSH approved and NFPA compliant and EN compliant, North American manufacturers seeking EN certification or the vice versa to sell their products worldwide must either allow face piece interchangeability or sell complete SCBA systems fitted with custom connections. That is what we are doing. Okay, with this note, I would like to thank you again for joining today. I really appreciate your time. Wherever you are, please stay safe, take care, and thank you again for joining. Now I'm going to end this presentation and look at your questions. I will post it on chat box and also Q&A section, and we will review all those points and then answer to your concerns. Thank you very much for joining today.